Hey, everybody. Fascinating guest and topic today around sharing data fearlessly, protecting and controlling your digital assets wherever they go with Vishal from Seclor. Vishal, how are you?
I'm doing well, Evan. And you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for being here. You have a fascinating biography and mission at Seclor. Maybe start with that. What's the big idea behind the company and describe your mission these days?
The big idea behind the company and the mission for the company is that normally security and collaboration are seen as mutually conflicting goals, right? Security teams are usually seen as, hey, I'm not going to let you do this and this other thing and this third thing and so on, and they're seen as inhibitors. So we are trying to get to a stage where security folks are seen as enablers, right? So yes,
Mm.
you can do this, and yes, you can do this other thing, and you can share freely, share data fearlessly, right? That's the mission.
Well, it's quite a mission, so important these days, given the challenges in our space and the juicy data everywhere. And you operate in what we call data-centric security world. So, why is data-centric security so important, no matter where it may lie, the obvious reasons and maybe not so obvious reasons?
See, see, I think we are in our let's say the fourth wave of security, right? If you go back 25, 30 years, and I'm maybe dating myself here, right? But but we started out trying to protect devices, right? Antivirus systems and so on, right? That's where the first wave of security came, and then we figured out that hey, devices are okay, but most of the breaches are happening over networks and intrusion detection systems and firewalls, and then next generation firewalls, and all of
Mm.
this came about. And then the third thing is that, hey, all of this infrastructure is okay, but it's really the applications, right? The email systems or the ERP systems and so on. That's where most of the most of the vulnerabilities lie, right? So there was this third wave of application security and so on. And then all of these are also moving, right? Devices are becoming personal, networks are becoming public, applications have moved to the cloud and so on, right? So those were the first three waves. And what enterprises have started realizing over the last few years, I would say, 5 6 years, and COVID was a big wake up call, is that none of these infrastructure elements are in their control anymore. So people are bringing in their own devices. Networks are all public. We are operating from airports and hotels and homes and beaches a lot more than sitting in the office and working from a desktop and so on. And applications have all moved outside of the control of the enterprise, right? So they've all moved to the cloud. So the things that the enterprises are starting out to protect, they themselves have moved out of the control of the enterprise. So it's almost like a renter buying homeowners insurance. Today, an enterprise trying to control devices
Mm.
that they don't own, networks that they don't control, and applications which they are just renting is exactly like a renter buying homeowners insurance. So what Seclor is trying to do, and what enterprises have realized, is that the only thing that they care about is data. Right? That's the one asset whose ownership doesn't move outside of the enterprise. It doesn't matter what devices, networks, and applications, right? And so on. So we are here living through the fourth wave of security, which is all around data-centric security, right? So collapse the perimeter into the data asset. Right? So put
Mm.
all the security rules, policies, governance, compliance, all of this moves to the data and almost away. I don't want to say away, but almost away from infrastructure. Right? So that's the wave that enterprises have realized that, and Seclor is riding that wave. Right? So away from infrastructure security and towards data becoming the unit or the element of security.
Well,
So the
fantastic
simplest
vision.
example, yeah. So the simplest example I can give you is that hey, if you are sharing or if you are sending me information over email, right, which happens maybe trillions of times every day, right? That let's say you're sending me a document over email. That document is on your desktop. Let's say it's there in your outbox over email. It's there in various email systems all over the internet. Then it's in my mailbox. It's on my desktop, and then maybe I can make a copy on my Dropbox account and so on. Right? So that information, if the idea here is to secure that information, right, that document that you just sent me, Then you have to protect your desktop, you have to protect your email infrastructure, the network, my email infrastructure, my desktop, my Dropbox account, right? And so on. So all of these things have to be secured for that data to be secure. With data-centric security, the data element, right, that document, for example, itself carries with it its own security and is not dependent on any or all of these devices being, or these pieces of infrastructure being protected, right? Which is a big relief for enterprises.
Absolutely. And you actually even talk about a future where a breach can be harmless. Now, wouldn't that be a world to strive for? Maybe elaborate on what you mean by that exactly and how you're contributing to that vision.
So, at least in security circles, I hear this term very often that breaches are inevitable. Right? It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when. Right? If you're large enough, if somebody is interested in your data, then you're breached. You're going to be breached, or you're probably already breached and you don't know about it, right? And so on. And if I were to take that, pessimistic view, right, then we should just not bother with cybersecurity, right? Why bother? And companies are spending billions of dollars every year, hundreds of billions of dollars every year in securing their infrastructure and their applications. So we should have just save that money and maybe solve another problem like world hunger or world peace or environment or something else, right? There's no dearth of problems to solve. What we talk about is as the harmless breach is really this idea that assuming that there is going to be a breach or there's already a breach somewhere, is there a way that information, a breach is only when somebody has access to information that they shouldn't be having, right? Let's consider that as the definition of a breach for now. And if that is the case, and if you can make sure that that information or the piece of data that they have is completely useless to them, but it's that same piece of data when it comes back to you or when it's with you is very useful, then that breach becomes harmless, right? So the inevitable, which is the breach, leads to the absolutely inconsequential, which is that they've stolen a you know pieces of junk, which doesn't mean anything. They can't make anything out of it. But that same piece of junk, when it comes back to you, right, it's a regular piece of information that you would otherwise have. Right? So that's the idea behind this whole idea of the harmless breach. That same piece of data is totally useless to the adversary, but is very useful to you. Right? That's our idea of the harmless breach, and with data centric security, it is not only possible but it's trivial to do that, right? And therefore the move towards data centric security and away from infrastructure security, because infrastructure security is about preventing the breach, and everybody wants to do that. But data centric security is about making the breach harmless, and therefore the economic incentives of somebody trying to even breach your infrastructure goes away, right?
A fantastic approach. Let's all hope we're on our way towards that world. And when you think about a typical customer, you work with lots of customers, big banks and other enterprises. I mean, how do you think about, integrating with all of the different tools and platforms that they already have in place? Some banks have dozens, 100, 200 different vendors in their network. That's probably a different topic, but how do you deploy in these complex environments?
Deployment and usage is very easy, right?
Hmm.
Because it's just it's a cloud service. I mean, we also do on-prem deployments, but generally speaking, it's a cloud service. You switch it on, 24 hours later, everybody in the enterprise can start using it, right? But I think the more important thing is what you talked about earlier. It's not a standalone system. I don't think any security system would be a standalone security system anymore. There are other security systems, identity systems, and of course, regular collaboration systems like the emails, example that I
Hmm.
just gave. And you might be sharing information using tens, right? Teams, SharePoint, Office 365, Slack,
Hmm.
WhatsApp, right? The number of ways in which you can share information with me is nearly unlimited, right? So what we do is in the interest of making sure that the end user, let's say you are sending an email to me. You are the end user. uh, you know in the interest of not putting any kind of overhead with the end user, which is in this example you, we integrate with a lot of systems within the enterprise, and we are the most integration friendly data centric security platform out there. Right? What do I
Mm.
mean by that is that we integrate with, for example, an email system, an Office 365, and maybe a core banking system for a bank, so that even when information comes out of the core banking system, it is already secured. And now, if it's put in Dropbox account or shared via email or FTP systems, or
Mm.
some new collaboration mechanism comes, 2 years from now, it doesn't matter, because even at the source, which in this case is the core banking system, any data being extracted from the core banking system is already protected, right? So therefore, the need for Evan to then go and do a series of steps and then protect that information and so on goes away, because it comes protected to you. You can do whatever you want with it, and the enterprise is able to control that. And even if it gets breached, it's a harmless breach. Going back to what we were talking earlier. Right. So it's
Often.
and I'll give you a couple of situations. So we have one of the largest banks in the world using our uh, using Seclor,
Mm.
and in this case, over a period of time, but they've integrated Seclor's core platform with nearly 80 different applications, core banking being one of them, risk management, of course, email and Office 365, and so on.
Mm.
And what that achieves is that the job of security uh, goes to the infrastructure and away from the people, right? So as an end user of the bank, I'm just doing whatever I was doing yesterday, and suddenly this security layer has come in and is securing all my data. Right. So even if I make a mistake, hey, not a big deal.
Wow, fantastic approach. And so the flip side, of course, of security is compliance, and you operate around the world. So how do you ensure compliance with so many, existing and emerging data protection regulations and standards and different industries like healthcare and financial services? There's always something new popping up. What's your approach there?
So it's interesting because we've been in business for about 12 years now, and we've seen compliance frameworks themselves evolve. Compliance frameworks of 12 years ago were focused on systems and processes. Right? Hey, you need to have these kind of controls, these systems, right, and these processes. Right? Fast forward today, most, if not all, compliance frameworks, privacy compliance, for example, or export control regulation compliance, and so on, all of these compliance frameworks have themselves become data centric. Right? So and the clue is right in the name. Right? If you look at the names of these compliance frameworks, they will always have data or information in them. Right? GDPR, the D is for data, right? PIP, which is personal, PDP, right, which is personal data protection, which is in the eastern part of the world, right? NYCDRR, right? The D is for data for the New York State, and so on, right? Or information or data we will always find even in the name. So what compliance frameworks have evolved to say, hey, we don't really care about, the regulators are saying, hey, we don't really care about your systems and processes, but we do care about that your data, that you should
Mm.
have data which is protected, almost independent of what systems and processes you use. And that's very aligned to the data centric approach. So besides data centric security, what we are helping enterprises to do is also data centric compliance. Right? So for example, you could build compliance policies that, hey, this piece of data doesn't leave California state, or this piece of data doesn't leave European Union, or only US citizens can access this set of data, right? And so on. And all of this is irrespective of the infrastructure. Right? So you could be collaborating over Dropbox or email or whatever next comes as methods of collaboration. But all of this compliance is built into the data itself. And what that does is that it helps an enterprise which is spread across, let's say, 100 countries. That's the same bank that I was talking about has presence in about 119 countries around the world,
Mm.
right? And every country has a 3 or 4 letter acronym, which is a compliance framework. right? So imagine complying with 119 plus compliance frameworks. So we've helped large enterprises with geographic, presence around the world to say, hey, we're going to make all this compliance, right, and compress it to the data itself, right? And another example that I can take is we are we have a pretty dominant presence in the in the manufacturing in general, but more specifically the semiconductor industry. And the semiconductor industry is very incestuous, right? You're competing with the same companies that you're collaborating with, and they are also your customers, and they are also your vendors, and right, and so on. So it's all kinds of relationships between all kinds of companies. And in that kind of a situation, collaboration is a big challenge, right? Because you don't want your intellectual property to be breached. Your vendors
Mm,
are also your competitors' vendors, right? And so on. All these situations are very, very common. And what we help some of the largest semiconductor companies in the world, from device and equipment manufacturers to fabrication houses to to chip manufacturers and so on, is that we can we are helping all of these companies in having a secured semiconductor supply chain.
mm.
So for example, if I am the fabrication house and you are the intellectual property owner, you can share all your designs
Oh
with
wow.
me fearlessly, and I might be in the other part of the world, right, other side of the world, and you will get not only control, security, and compliance, but also visibility. You will actually be able to
Mm,
see real time what I'm doing with your data, right? So it's not only harmless breach, if at all, God forbid, it happens, but it's also complete visibility of data that you get about what I'm doing with it, right? Which helps in compliance, non-repudiation, right? All of that. It's really a very powerful concept. And the challenge that historically this idea of data-centric security has faced, back before Seclor was around, is, hey, it's tough to use, users don't like it, and so on. And we've reduced that down to zero, user friction down to zero, simply by just taking away the need for a user to do anything, right? So again, you're sharing data with a provider. You are in California, you're sharing very confidential intellectual property with a supplier in Taiwan or in China and so on. It doesn't matter. You can just pick up that piece of information, send it over email, just like what you were doing earlier. And all of this collaboration is secure. So we are making
wow,
whole
that's
value
phenomenal.
chain. Yeah, yeah. It
And
is really powerful.
given the hundreds of billions of dollars being invested in semiconductor supply chains, that's it's nice to see that security won't be an afterthought, at least with your customers. Looking ahead, we have Black Hat coming up. This is going to be a hot topic, also in Vegas, so literally hot. But what are you excited about in terms of Black Hat this year, and some of the forward-thinking trends, opportunities, advancements that you expect to come out of the show? What's on your mind, not just from your standpoint, but from an industry standpoint?
Well, it might be a beaten horse here, right? But AI is going to be a big topic.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
but we also believe in the present circumstances, we also expect, and we have a thread on both of these topics. We also expect third-party risk to be a big topic,
mm,
right? So enterprises are realizing that they are not living in isolation, but they have whole supply chains or value chains around them,
mm,
and the weakest link in that value chain is about as secure as your data is, right? So for example, I mean, going back to the email example, right? If you send me an email, there are 6, maybe 10 different systems that are coming together, and if your mailbox get breached, then suddenly I might have a breach and I might not even know
mm,
about it, right? And so I think AI and this whole third party is that how dependent are enterprises on these third parties to do their job well and to secure their own businesses and so on. I think those are the two big topics that we see. We have a big presence in Black Hat, by the way. So those are the two topics we see being dominant in this Black Hat. And on the AI front, we are doing a lot of that. There's a lot of intelligence machine learning and intelligence that's already built into the Seclor product. And even before the term machine learning and AI came about, right, 12 years ago, we started working on that, and we continue to invest in this to do automated policy formation, for example. Right? How does one find out how secure is this document that you just sent? Right?
Mm.
Those kind of questions. So we are investing a lot, and we ourselves are using a lot of AI for our own internal operations, right? So AI and third parties, those are, I believe, the two big topics in this black hat.
Well, it's exciting times, and thank you for giving us a sense of optimism around fearless data sharing. So much of our industry tends to be pretty negative and pessimistic for obvious reality reasons today, but there's hope and light at the end of the tunnel. Thanks, Vishal. Thanks for sharing your insights, and good luck on the mission.
Thanks a lot, Evan, for having me. It's great. I've followed your videos for a long time. Now you're doing a great job, and thanks a lot for having me. If you're in Black
Thanks for
Hat, look
being
forward to
here.
meeting you.
Likewise. And thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching
Thank you.
and listening, and look forward to talking soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.